Hi, everyone. I'm Flynn.
I'm Gianni.
I'm Luke.
And welcome to another episode of Chatting Cinema. Today we are going to finally give our thoughts on Rise of Skywalker, kind of just talk through it, initial reactions, how we felt about everything.
Like civil adults
Yes.
on like film Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think?
I think, first of all, similarly to The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I went into this movie super excited.
Yes.
And that was despite a pretty lukewarm reception, I think, from critics. That Rotten Tomatoes score dropped, and I was like, wow, it's kind
I
of
was
low.
getting a little nervous, yeah.
It was
Critics
sitting...
were harsh on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, critics were. But I still went into it with a totally open mind. I had loved this trilogy up till that point, so I was really excited to see it still. And I had a good time.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I think there are a lot of, I've said this to you guys, I think, off camera, and definitely to other people that I saw it with. And it's like, I think there are some of the best moments in Star Wars in The Rise of Skywalker. Some of the best moments ever, like in a Star Wars movie. But there are also some things that I totally disagree with and that I really didn't like and that really rubbed me the wrong way. But we can get into that, obviously. But overall, I was entertained. I had some issues.
Yeah.
So unlike Gianni, I went in with no expectations whatsoever because the last 3 times I've seen a Star Wars movie with expectations, I was just like hit in different ways every single time, which this isn't like the numbered, it's like Rogue One, Last Jedi, Solo. I was just kind of like thrown off every single time.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, Luke? You love Star Wars. Just go in, nothing. Go in with nothing and leave with however you feel. And like you said, I feel like the best word to describe it was I enjoyed it. I was entertained. Wasn't the best Star Wars movie by any means, but I had a good time. And I really agree that some of the best moments of the series are in this movie, but there are some very weak points too, which is okay because movies aren't perfect. You know, like as long as it is entertaining and it had a good ending, which I thought it did. Obviously, there's always a better way that fans think of. But for me, I left the theater with a smile like across my face, and like I was just like, I love Star Wars. Like, you know, this wasn't my favorite. And and when I rank all 9, it's not my favorite. But I had a good time.
I agree completely. I actually, unfortunately, I did go in like with my confidence kind of dinged and like feeling like nervous and upset because this trilogy means so much to me. And these characters, the new characters, the sequel trilogy characters mean so much. And I was just really nervous. And then, I was watching it and like halfway through, I'm like, I'm feeling this. And then by the end, I was, the same. Like there are decisions that I don't like that we'll talk about, but overall there are a lot of really great moments, I think, and there was way more good than bad for me. Specific narrative choices aside, like visually, I think this movie is awesome, and everybody is like at such a point with their characters. That we get some of the best performances, especially from Daisy. I think she does such a good job as Rey in this movie. And so, I had a really good time with it. And I'll revisit it again and again and again, as I already have in theater. I've seen it 4 times now, I think. And every time I'm just like, I'm having a good time with this. Yeah. Every time I kind of watch it, I'm like, am I gonna not like it now? And then I get to the end and I'm like, no, it's cool. I'm down.
No, definitely. I think I want to hit on some of the things that I absolutely adored about it.
Well, I feel like we should get the negative out of the way.
You want to do that first?
Because because obviously, like every movie, you're gonna have problems, but I would love to end on what we loved.
End on
Deal.
a high note.
And also, spoiler alert.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna get
If
into
you
a lot
have
of
not
spoilers.
seen it, do not continue watching and watch after you see it.
Okay,
And
well,
go see it.
then first off, I don't like how Palpatine came back, and I think he should have been left out. I really do. Let's let that character die in Return of the Jedi.
Agreed.
You agree? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now, while I agree, I didn't hate how they did it.
Okay.
But I do agree he should not have been there.
Yeah.
I think that they could have come up with a new villain. They could have built up Snoke. They could have built up Kylo, whoever they wanted. And, I mean, if you're thinking about it in the sense of the Skywalker saga, he is the villain in all 9 movies. It makes sense. I think they could have done better, but I don't hate how they did it. I'm like in this middle place where like I know what you're saying, but I know what they were trying to do, and I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thinking from that perspective of the Skywalker side, like listening to JJ or Terrio talk about like why they did it, it makes sense from their point of view. I agree that I don't like it. And I was so sure that, because there's stuff in Legends that Sith Force ghosts are sometimes tied to a location. So they're somewhat like Jedi, but they can't just like pop up like Yoda's all over the place and Obi-Wan is like in the sky and Hoth or whatever. Like they're tied to a location. So I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. This is why the wreckage of the Death Star is in this movie. Yeah. I was 100% positive that Palpatine was not going to be a real person risen from the dead with, cloning or dark science. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Right. Well, that's like their plot hole escapee thing. Every single time is secrets the Sith only knew. I'm like, bro, how many secrets do they have that, like, you can't just keep being like they have another secret that allows us to do this. Like they're pushing it. No, don't get me wrong. Darth Maul coming back in Clone Wars was excellente.
Yeah.
But that was a secret that the Sith only knew.
Right. Yeah. So I have a problem with Palpatine coming back, especially because it leads to another narrative decision that I'm not a fan of, which is Rey being a Palpatine.
Sure.
It doesn't even sound right, even though I know it's like canon.
Yeah.
Like when they said it in the movie, I just kind of stopped and I was like, so that's where this is going.
And it's kind of interesting too, because after Force Awakens, that theory, the popular theory was that she was a Kenobi or a Skywalker, this and that. And the Palpatine theory kind of floated around, and that was really interesting because Kylo has sort of the hero's backstory, right? Like two legacy characters, and they're both the good guys, and he's trained by the goodest of all good guys in Luke Skywalker, and he turns. So it would be so interesting to have Rey have a villain's backstory and end up the hero. And so after Force Awakens came out, it was like, okay, cool. And in the novelization of Force Awakens, actually, there's in the fight in the forest, Rey hears a voice in her head, and she's totally tapping into the dark side when she's like slashing at Kylo at the end there. But then after Last Jedi, that kind of lost its sheen for me, knowing that like there was a legitimate possibility that Rey was not going to be tied to a legacy character, that she was going to be Rey from nowhere, like, and that really worked for me.
Yeah.
So to see sort of like I don't even want to say retcon, but like to sort of hedge on that bet and make her a Palpatine was disappointing for me, just specifically because I don't hate the choice in the grand scheme of things, but as far as where this trilogy was going and where we had already been, it was disappointing for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it just left a bad taste in my mouth because at the end of Last Jedi, I really, similarly to you, I liked that Rey was being set up as a nobody, that anyone can be force sensitive, and I think that really expands the universe too, and I think that's what Rian Johnson was really trying to do with that film, show that there are so many facets and sides to the Star Wars galaxy.
Right.
It's a galaxy.
Yeah.
It's not just the legacy characters that we know.
One family that matters.
Right. Yeah. So then I just feel like parts of Rise of Skywalker, specifically Rey being a Palpatine, are just so reactionary.
Yeah.
There's such a reaction to Last Jedi. And I don't know, it left a bad taste in my mouth.
Like,
yeah, and I think the Rise of Skywalker, this is like an overarching thing that the trilogy suffered from. Like the Rise of Skywalker specifically, you feel it because it's the culmination of the trilogy. But Star Wars, like the people in charge, Kathleen Kennedy, should have gotten the directors that she wanted to work on the films in a room together and worked out the entire story in one go. Because there is no unity, there is no fluidity with these movies. Now, some people hate The Last Jedi. That's fine. Some people love it. That's fine. But I just want the movies to flow. I hate the Attack of the Clones.
Right.
I think it's the worst Star Wars movie. But it flows with 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
It bridges them. Last Jedi does not bridge 7 and 9, and that's because JJ did what he wanted and didn't work with Ryan.
Yeah. And
that's unfortunate because The Last Jedi suffers because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's the outlier. So this trilogy needed fluidity. It needed a concise story that worked with itself. And I don't see Ryan's end story being bad at all.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better probably.
Yeah.
But I don't dislike JJ's.
Yes.
It's just they didn't work together.
Right.
And it shows. And it's like everybody may knock 1, 2, and 3, but they flow very nicely, and it's not the best, but it's a good story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like they work with each other. It's like 1 starts it, 2 builds off 1, 3 builds off both. And that's how a trilogy should go.
Yeah, it's one singular. It's George's vision.
Almost like a pissing contest between the directors.
Yeah.
Which like I don't think would have happened if it was handled differently at the conception of the trilogy.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And, some of I agree. And some of the stuff that, JJ did, like Gianni was saying, just feels so reactionary. Like,
It is.
the monologue from Luke in Last Jedi, and not to, like, keep going back to Last Jedi because we're talking about Rise of Skywalker, but, like, to Gianni's point about expanding the galaxy, like Luke telling Rey it's time for the Jedi to end, and to think that only one group of people has a monopoly on the Force's vanity is like awesome, and that's what it should be, and that's how I would understand the Force.
Yeah.
And Last Jedi doesn't end saying that there aren't allowed to be Jedi, and I think that people, and I don't know if JJ misinterpreted that or JJ knew that some fans misinterpreted that and was like, okay, we're gonna, because a moment I really love in this movie is all the Jedi coming with Rey, and the be with me moment. I think it's great, and I think all those cameos are great, but it really feels like a doubling down of, no, the Jedi rule. They're the best. And like every point that Last Jedi makes is true. The legacy of the Jedi is failure. They continually mess things up. They continually allow for these things to happen. And it's not that, like people can use the light side of the Force without buying into a religion. So it just felt like a very much like this, like, no, I think that this is what the Jedi are in people's minds. And it's like, they don't have to be,
Yeah.
Well, I think something you said just now makes perfect sense, where you don't have to use the light side of the Force by buying into a religion. The Jedi are a religion.
Right.
They're a group that figured out how to use it. They're not the only people who know how to use it.
Exactly.
And that could have really set up the universe, which they can still very
And that's
easily
Broom Boy at
Broom
the end.
Boy.
Like he's
Broom Boy,
using
Star
the
Wars
Force.
story.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I think that if they work together and they built, because like also the ending of 9, like I don't want to ever see another Skywalker saga movie. Like I don't want to see 10, 11, 12.
Right.
Because the way it ended. And like the way 6 ended was open. But the way they ended this was very concise
Yeah, it
and
felt
done.
pretty definitive.
Which I also disagree with. I feel like there could have been a 10, 11, 12 with a said character, Ben Solo, being the focal point. But that was my biggest problem with this movie was spoilers.
Yeah.
Ben dies.
Yeah.
Bye, Ben.
Watching it, I understood why it was happening, but I felt like we were being cheated because Adam Driver is the best part of this trilogy.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's disputable that like his character's progression from like full on dark side, I hate everything, to like
fractured, seduced by the light side. It's so good.
And like just all the moments we had with him in this movie where like you saw Han's mannerisms within him.
Yeah.
Like those were just such nice touches where like I was like, all right, and then they killed him.
Yeah.
I'm just like, really? Like, you really had to go and do that right now?
Yeah.
Make him so damn likable and redeemable. Like he's back. He's Ben. For 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's a shame because I understand the thinking of like, all right, how do we can redeem this character in the eyes of the viewer. How do we redeem him in universe, right? Like, how does Rey show up on the X-Wing followed by the TIE fighter with Ben Solo to the Resistance base where they've been fighting this guy? This guy's been murdering their friends for years. I get that, but it really did feel like a waste because the reason the throne room fight scene in Last Jedi is my favorite. Again, Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars
Flynn,
scene.
you like The Last Jedi?
I do quite a bit actually. The reason that's my favorite Star Wars scene is I love Ben Solo, and I love seeing Ben Solo. And for a few minutes there, you get to see Ben Solo.
Yeah.
And then it's gone because Rey rejects him in that moment. And then it's like, and then we get to see Ben Solo again, and it's like, oh my God, Ben Solo is the best Star Wars character.
He is.
He rules. And, he's taking on the Knights of Ren. He's doing the Solo shrug. He's shooting
like when he pulls the
stormtroopers.
lightsaber like this, I was like,
so good.
Oh, like freaking out.
Yeah, like Rey and Ben's dynamic is so good. So it really felt like, people have kind of like touched on like, was this the decision they were going to make? Was this something they changed at the last minute? I don't know, but it does really feel weird that he dies by Palpatine throwing him off, and then he comes back. He wasn't dead. And then he, uses Force healing to bring back Rey, and then they have a moment, and then he just dies right again. It did feel a little weird to me, like something ain't right here.
If they wanted to do 10, 11, 12, Ben was it.
Yeah.
Like right, and it's no disrespect to any of the other new trilogy characters, but like he's your guy.
Yeah.
It's a Skywalker saga. Without a Skywalker,
yeah,
movies don't
he's
make
the
sense.
Skywalker. Yeah.
And like it's not that I don't think Rey couldn't carry a movie. She just did.
Yeah.
But you need a Skywalker in the Skywalker saga, and that's why I think it's just like a weird place of no more Skywalker movies.
Yeah.
But we should get to the stuff we like.
Well, before that, you just mentioned that Ben had his sort of like fake out death, and that's something else I wanted to hit on that I really didn't like. That seemed to be a running theme throughout the film, that there are all these like fake out deaths.
Yes.
Like Chewbacca first, and
Yeah,
at first
that's true.
I was like, wow, he's dead.
Yeah.
And I was really upset, and then he was back, and I'm thinking, okay, like, got me.
Yeah.
And then they did it again with 3PO.
Yes.
And then with Ben, and then with Rey.
Yeah.
It was just happening.
There's a whole lot
movie.
of
Classic fake out.
Yeah.
and I want to talk about Rise of Skywalker on its own, but I'm gonna bring up Last Jedi again because
Hey, do you like the Last Jedi?
it's just the one thing specifically about Last Jedi is like it makes choices and sticks to them, whereas Rise of Skywalker, it felt like they were almost scared to do that.
Wishy-washy.
Yeah, because of the reactions that Last Jedi elicited from some people.
Yeah.
So it felt like like you're saying, like every bet got hedged.
Which again, if they had just met up before it started, written out
Yeah.
the entire story, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Although, you know what I will say for that? I don't 100% agree with the whole there wasn't a roadmap for this trilogy, because I do think there was a vague roadmap.
Yes.
And I think
I would
that-
say that's
That when,
right.
when Ryan Johnson came in, and when Abrams and Terrio came back for Rise of Skywalker, they were just given all the freedom in the world, so they could kind of be selective with
Right.
what they wanted to do with what had just happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it was
Yeah.
lost in translation,
I
and that's
think-
where you get some inconsistency.
You need to work together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I agree. I think that what probably happened was there was like a overall like these are our characters, they get from point A to point B to point C, this happens, this is how it ends, big resistance celebration, good guys win, yada yada. And the problem with that was that JJ came in and was like, okay, I can do this, this, and this. And then didn't realize that somebody else would come in without his specific vision. He also didn't plan to do the third one.
True.
So in doing that, he's like, no, this isn't what I was going to do, and just did that instead of organically flowing with, okay, this is where we're going with it. Fine, let's do this story decision, because it's a mess behind the scenes. Colin Trevorrow is the director, and he gets a story credit for this. So what is his? The story details from his are kind of floating out, and it's like people say that those are real, but it's like all these different there's
Also,
concept art and it's not in.
Anybody who says that the JJ cut is real is dumb.
Yeah.
Because we watched the JJ cut.
We
in the
watched
movie
it
theater.
100%.
We've already seen it.
Yeah.
It is that. There is no he didn't hate the "they fly now" scene. Like it's a Star Wars movie. This is a toy commercial, people.
I
They
like
sell
that scene.
toys. I know you would. And I like it too.
That's a fun scene.
But my point is that all these theories of JJ fought for a better movie. This is JJ's movie. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
He made-
Kathleen came in with no, this is gonna happen, and
Which-
JJ was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
that's
no.
not what happened. I'm
no,
sorry.
the bad things that happened are also JJ's fault, along with the good things.
Yeah.
It's like they're a director; they make choices, and it's both up to them. But we are at 19 minutes. We haven't talked about what we liked.
Let's do it. Let's talk about what we liked. I love that Rey, Finn, and Poe kind of go on their own adventure in this film.
Finally.
Wish Rose was there, but I love it.
I wish Rose was there too.
Yeah.
I was gonna hit on that as well. I wish Rose had more of a spotlight in this film. I think that was a huge mistake on their part. But nonetheless, I loved that we
Yes.
got to see our three heroes go on that nice adventure together. People have been saying oh, the bickering is dumb, it doesn't work, but I think that's
Hard
that's
disagree.
Ever
great.
watch 4 or 5
Yeah.
or 6?
Yeah.
They bicker
Hard
They're
quite a lot.
so
disagree.
stressed out. Of course, they're gonna
Yeah.
be fighting with each other left and right. And
That's the point. And
yeah.
also, if you think about their dynamics, Finn is the connector between the three, where
Right.
he's friends with Poe, he's friends with Rey,
Right.
but Rey and Poe don't really know each other
Yeah.
aside from they fought together.
right.
And it's there's gonna be tension because they're fighting over Finn's love.
yeah, yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Familial, and I was so thrilled by that because we knew John and Daisy had really good chemistry together, and we knew John and Oscar had really good chemistry together. But I think that Oscar and Daisy had really good chemistry together too. I think they worked really well as a group. Like their back and forth when Poe lands the Falcon and Rey's been training is just like so good.
It was like Leia and Han's back and forth, or like because it just worked so well. Where like you're gonna be in this tiny ship, like with these same people for long stretches of time, because the movie doesn't show how long they're together for, you know, and like it's just a fun dynamic where like that's the relatable part of Star Wars. Where like this could be you and your group of friends off on some insane adventure.
You're a difficult man.
That those that those three people would have never expected they'd be on. Like I thought that was great.
Yeah,
and it was nice to just finally see that, because like this series like kind of had them on their heels from the get-go, where like they were on the run right away, which I liked. I thought that was good, but it was nice to finally get like the group together.
I loved the relationship that was built up with Leia and Rey, and I love the send-off for Leia. I think that was really beautifully handled and well done.
Yes. Very difficult task.
And
they did it in a very nice way, which, you know, like one thing I thought that complemented The Last Jedi really well was the flashback with Leia and her lightsaber. Because the thing is that like her whole scene where she uses the Force to bring herself back in the ship, they never said she got Jedi training. Like the books did. But the movies never did. So 7 or 8. So it's both their fault. And I was like, all right, that makes sense now.
Yeah,
like,
and she was full. That flashback, it was like the last day of her training, so we know that she went through like a full training period.
It's like that little thing like
Luke.
Made The Last Jedi make more sense to me, and I appreciated that, because even though I said like they didn't flow, there was moments where they did.
Yeah,
sure.
So
absolutely.
I thought her lightsaber was dope too.
Yeah, she got a good lightsaber.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was gonna be purple. the blade when she ignited it, I was like, oh, it's blue. All right.
Yeah. I mean, she's a Skywalker. It makes sense.
Yeah, Skywalker blue. I love Rey and Kylo. And Rey and Ben, I guess.
Good boy.
Yeah, I think they're so good together. I think that their stuff in this movie is probably the stuff that works the best. They're sort of like Force vision fights that just keep like bouncing from planet to planet.
So well executed.
Yeah, I think they're so good. And then at the end when Ben turns and you know they have their little moment. And I'm gonna talk about the Reylo kiss. Everybody,
before you do that, because you were starting to talk about it, I think that the only lightsaber duel in this series that rivals Episode 3's is this one on the Death Star.
So good.
Because like if we're doing some power rankings right now, like number 1 is the Episode 3, number 2 is that, and you won't like me, but I think number 3 is Luke and Vader and 6. 4 is the throne room.
No, it's a good one.
4 is the throne room. But
Luke and Vader.
I know throne room is your favorite.
Yeah, I love throne room.
Which, don't get me wrong, I ain't sleeping on it. But I look at it within like story purposes too, because like 4, 5, and 6 weren't as exciting, but like the stories.
Yeah, they have more emotional weight.
Yeah, exactly. So, but this duel was just so exciting visually. Like
it was a marriage of both.
Like everything that was happening, like this gigantic like ocean storm happening, and like everything is falling apart. They're on the remnants of the Death Star.
Yeah, visually it's so good.
And Rey was tapping more and more into the dark side. And I'm just like, hello, Rey. Yeah, what you doing?
To the point of like physical exhaustion. Like they're like barely going by the end of it because they put everything into it.
All right, now you can talk about your kiss.
I'm gonna talk about the Reylo kiss. Everybody, buckle in.
Buckle in.
I love it. I love it. The first time I watched it, I was like, cool. Like I was good with it, and then. The more I thought about it, I was like, no, I like this even more, because you know,
Gianni's just like boiling his seat right now.
I have talked about, and I interpret Star Wars to be about love, and so I interpret the light side of the Force to be love, and the fact that Rey and Ben are a dyad in the Force made it make sense to me that they have this kind of like connective relationship where words aren't necessary and they're kind of like just like bonded in that like interesting way that we haven't seen Star Wars explore before. So I thought that Last Jedi built to this. Like I figured it was coming, and I thought that it worked.
Yeah. Before you go, I'm like in the middle on it. Okay. Then you can tee off.
Okay.
So I liked it, but then when Ben died, I was like, well, and it was pointless. So
Yeah, that's
I
a
was just
shame.
like, you set this up. Here it is. We've been thinking it's gonna happen, and now it's gone.
Bring Ben back 2020.
I think
Yes.
I'm in a similar
That's
boat.
all I have to say.
I think I'm
so.
in a similar boat. I wish that if Ben was going to die, I wish they didn't kiss and at least exchanged a few words.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Because
if Ben was gonna live,
when Ben
then I'm good
died-
with the kiss.
Right.
Like,
when Ben died,
mhm.
all had been won. Like they already won. Palpatine was gone.
Yeah.
And then he died. So
Yeah.
it was like there was no stakes left.
Yeah.
It was just like, all right, like, and then they kissed, and then he died.
Yeah.
The end.
I also think for me, it's that getting back to all of those fake out deaths that were happening throughout the film. I feel like Ben's death would have been felt more if like Chewie hadn't fake died and
Yeah.
3PO didn't have his memory wiped just to come back.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, this is the one you're gonna kill. This is the
Yeah.
one you're gonna stick to.
Like
Yeah,
after
yeah.
teasing killing 2 of our original trilogy characters that are
Right.
beloved and side characters, like, you gonna do that to us?
after Leia had died,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like let's pick one,
Yeah.
you know, and have that be the
yeah,
one that
let's
hits
chill out.
hard.
Think about
like,
in episode 7 when Han dies. I already know you're cringing. Like, oh,
Like
it felt like so powerful.
yeah.
And then because of like even there was fake out deaths in 8 where like, but when Luke fades, I was like, well, I am sad now. Like I wasn't like Han where I literally cried.
Yeah.
And then you're totally right. 9 was just like, this guy's dead. No, he's
Nah,
not. This
wait a
one's dead.
minute.
No, he's not. It was like Game of Thrones, except they kept coming
Right.
back.
Although, and I do want to say that I've only seen the movie once,
Same
and
here.
I'm going to see it again, obviously, when it comes out. But I do think that in hindsight and in retrospect, as the years go on, the Solo family, that trio, is going to go down as a really tragic but also
Yeah.
triumphant story.
Yeah.
In that they all die in the end, but they still had their resolutions, and
Right.
I think that's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
So at least
Right.
knowing that Ben died satisfied and redeemed, and himself feeling like a weight has been lifted,
Right.
that I think in retrospect I'll feel good about.
That Ben Solo smile. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Melt.
Mhm.
Well,
Melt.
I think one thing that's interesting to think about with this too, because this is like the last Star Wars retrospective, like the original trilogy obviously was beloved from the get-go and still ages very nicely. 1, 2, and 3 were not received well, but our generation likes them a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. No. It's
And they're starting to be. I think I think these movies will age nicely.
yeah.
I
I think
And
so
I
too.
think being able to watch all 9 will change how we feel too, because it's a
I
different.
can't wait to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I've done so many Star Wars
Yeah.
marathons. I'm
Yeah.
like so ready to do like an all 9 one.
Oh
now.
yeah.
But I think that in the end, it's like obviously there's things we wish could have been better, done differently. But
Sure.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy
yeah.
too. The one scene I wanna touch on before like if we want to wrap up is one of my favorite scenes in the movie is Han and Ben on the Death Star. I don't know, the story came out like JJ just called up Harrison and he said he'd do it. I don't know if he was like, Harrison, you're gonna have to do like a couple new lines of dialogue and the rest is what you say in Force Awakens. You don't even have to memorize a new script. I don't know if that was part of it, but I think it works so well.
Yeah.
It's so Han Solo.
And just the dad I know moment is like enough to make me like never be able to hate this movie ever, because like that, like I get choked
Hey,
up
kid.
thinking about it. Yeah, it's so good, and it's such a nice like turning of like, you know, Leia sacrificed herself to save Ben, and then Han comes back with this conversation. They both kind of like they both both lost their lives to try and like save the soul of their son, and I think it's like such a nice like quiet moment in this movie that it just like flies at 1,000 miles an hour, and
Yeah.
it just like
It really
like
does.
everything's happening, and then it just like kind of stops to have that moment, and I think it's really nice.
Yeah, I agree. I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
That was a great moment to pause, and yeah, it felt good.
Yeah.
I love Han.
I love Han too.
I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
Han as Lando likes to say. Lando too, great.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah, forgot about
But
Lando.
again, with the non-unity, this isn't directors now. Apparently, that stormtrooper is his daughter.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like,
It's
you-
like it
we
like
had
a
to
line in
find
the
out from
visual
the ins-
dictionary.
Yeah, the visual dictionary. That's where we find that out. Not the movie. Okay. All right then. And like in the beginning, Ben is at Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
bro,
never.
Like
We don't get like a little like
Mustafar.
we need the Civil War giant location.
right.
I mean, it
tags.
worked. I knew
Yeah.
where I was at
Yeah.
all times in that movie. But yeah, no, it was just like funny, all these details that we find out afterwards.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
what Finn wanted to say to Rey was, I'm force sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, we didn't talk.
Me
about
too.
that.
As he's sinking into the
Hey.
sand.
Yeah, like, hey, Ray. Force sensitive.
Just a feeling.
Whatever.
Yeah, the Lando thing was so funny because like I can't remember what that planet is that they're on, where Ochi's ship is, but a guy in a mask saves them and you're like, all right, it's Lando.
Yeah.
Like everybody
Alright,
knows
it's
it's Lando and it's like, all right,
it's
get to
Lando.
it.
Just take the mask off.
And then they talk to him, he takes his mask off and he's like, Wookiees stand out in the crowd. I was like, oh my god, it's Lando. Right? Like the whole time it was like, all right, it's Lando. But then like Billy D just becomes Lando again and it was so perfect.
He's so charismatic.
Yeah.
And that's why Donald Glover is a perfect follow up
Donald
because
Glover.
it's so
Right.
charismatic.
Yeah.
Give me a Lando movie. Give
So-
it to me. Or a series.
Give
Yeah.
us the Solo series on Disney Plus, please.
Please.
Oh my, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's beautiful.
I don't know if they'll be able to afford Donald Glover for it, but maybe a cameo because I really want more Solo with Alden. But Rise of Skywalker,
Rise of
Oh
Skywalker.
yeah, Rise of Skywalker.
good, liked it.
That I feel like it's a great ending point.
Yeah.
We're 31 minutes in, boys.
We're good. That
Yeah.
wraps up our last Star Wars kind of talk.
And
At
hey-
least for now. At
And
least
hey,
for now.
If you liked it, good for you. If
Yeah,
you didn't, good
yeah.
for
Yeah.
you. Just
The Skywalker
whatever.
saga is over? Question mark. I don't know. We'll never
find
know.
out. Watch The
Find out.
Mandalorian.
Next time on Game Grumps.
Taika Waititi, come on in. All right, yeah, that wraps up episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Thanks for listening. Thanks for
Thank
watching.
you so much.
You can always find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts now, and YouTube, as well as, any other host of podcast platforms that you listen to your podcasts on. I'm Gianni.
I'm Flynn.
And I'm Luke.
Thanks for listening, guys.